Big news from the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, where they've documented the first US case of congenital hearing loss being treated with gene therapy. So let's break down what all of this means. So let's start with congenital hearing loss or congenital deafness. What that means is that you have some kind of deafness or hearing loss at birth. That's what congenital means. And it means that it's happened because of a missing gene or a mutated gene or something that's gone wrong with a particular gene. Now, in this particular case, the gene therapy only works on one specific kind of congenital hearing loss. So that doesn't mean this works for elderly populations who have lost hearing over time. It also means it doesn't work for other kinds of congenital hearing loss. And in this particular case, the gene that was missing or mutated or had some kind of issue was the OTOF gene, which creates a protein called otoferlin, which is very important in your ability to hear. Now, the problem with congenital disease, typically, is that if you're missing the gene, you're missing the instruction manual on creating the protein that is so required for whatever function in life. So in this particular patient, they were missing the instruction manual to create otoferlin. So what is gene therapy? Gene therapy is basically when you insert that gene into a patient through an injection or whatever means, and that basically means that you're giving them the instruction manual to create that protein. Now, in this case, the patient went from having complete deafness to going to mild to moderate hearing loss, which is a huge win and a huge development for gene therapy, because it shows, and it's almost like a proof of concept, that there are many other medications that might be along the way. Now, one thing to clarify as well is that gene therapy is very different from gene editing. If you've heard of CRISPR, then you might know that CRISPR takes a gene and then modifies it, takes a part out and puts a new part in to, edit the gene. Gene therapy is different from gene editing, like CRISPR. Gene therapy is just about inserting a new gene, while gene editing is about editing a new gene. So there are differences. But a very interesting philosophical question has come up of late. And that is, does deafness need a cure? Now, for a lot of people, their gut instinct and reaction might be, obviously it does. I would rather not lose my hearing. But within the deaf community, this is a very legitimate and difficult question that has really intrigued a lot of individuals within the community. And this is because the deaf community is a very robust and tight-knit community in which they're all able to support each other, and they have, American Sign Language as their main form of communication in America, I would say. But this is what allows them to come together and, create an identity around their particular circumstances and situation. In fact, many people find it empowering that they're able to have this community. So the question is, if we quote-unquote cure deafness, does that mean we're stripping people away from these communities? Because that means that, if you're now a person who goes from non-hearing to hearing, perhaps you no longer feel like you need that community, or perhaps you don't even feel like you belong in that community. So these are all very interesting questions that have been brought up by a lot of individuals, ethicists, scientists, researchers, and all that. But philosophical debate aside, and this particular discovery aside, what does this mean for the future? I think this is really interesting and very exciting, because it goes to show that gene therapy can work and is in the interest books for a lot of pharmaceutical companies. So looking at other conditions like cystic fibrosis or sickle cell anemia, those are some other candidates that could absolutely be, hopefully, treated with gene therapy in the future. And to see these pharmaceutical companies so interested in smaller niche cases, because not a lot of people are affected by OTOF congenital hearing loss, but the fact that they're still making and developing new treatments for these niche kinds of conditions goes to show that there's a lot of interest in gene therapy nowadays, and it might one day help to serve a much larger community of individuals and hopefully cure a lot of other diseases that we have very much struggled to manage in our current day. So there's a lot of promise with gene therapy. There's a lot of research to go, but we can't forget all of the philosophical considerations of what we're doing with science, but we also can't forget that all of these new discoveries are very exciting in trying to improve the human condition and human health. Thanks for watching.